So as you know, on the 20th of October 2020, the Nigerian army allegedly opened fire on peaceful protesters, civilians who were protesting for the end of SARS movement at the Lekki toll gates. It was a day of great loss. We all cried in our rooms and screamed and cried until we couldn't do any of that anymore. It's been hard and extremely depressing. I saw this video where this man was talking about how the youth that are protesting, they're dealing with old soldiers who know how to fight. They're not here to listen to the needs of the people and address those needs and lead the people, like they're bullies, they're soldiers. Buhari was a general in the Nigerian army and was a military leader back in the day. So we're dealing with people who are used to operating in a very different way. They're used to commanding and having soldiers roll over at their every command. They're used to bribing and bullying their way out of accountability, not leading a people, not leading a democracy. And to be honest, I think we're not that shocked at, how inept Buhari and friends are at their jobs. I think we're all just shocked by the level of wickedness they have displayed, particularly with this incident. Some of the things that have been happening more recently after, the Lekki Tollgate massacre, there have been reports of ENDSARS protesters having their passports seized so that they couldn't travel, having their bank accounts frozen. The one thing we've seen is that the Nigerian government is very consistent in their shamelessness. Last week, it was reported that the Nigerian Broadcasting Commission allegedly fined local news houses like AIT, Arise News channels 3 million naira each for covering the ENDSARS protests. Like, they know that if they apply enough pressure, they can, discourage local media houses from, reporting on certain things. But the government can't control social media quite as easily as they can local media houses, right? And social media opened them up to a lot of international disgrace during this ENDSARS protest. So they've brought back talk of that social media bill again. Now, we've talked about this social media bill situation in a previous video before and how the government has tried to pass it a couple of times, pass bills that would allow them to cut off or severely stifle social media and free speech basically within Nigeria. And that would have been very, very detrimental to this movement. Like, think of how instrumental social media was, with the ENDSARS protest. How many people were able to get help, how much work organizations like Feministco were able to do, people asking for help on Twitter, people donating money, the spread of information, people both in Nigeria and in diaspora. We were all able to learn what was happening, to see videos, to hear the bullets as they shot at the protesters at the Lekki toll gate. We were able to unite and band together, right? So social media was incredibly influential and instrumental to this movement. If we didn't have it, we wouldn't have been able to push for international traction in the way that we were able to. And they're not stupid. They realized that, so they've put this bill back on the table again to try and pass it. And obviously, a bill like this would be a major infringement on the basic right to free speech. The bottom line is it would be extremely catastrophic if a bill like this were to get passed into law. So do your best to spread awareness about it. I will leave any links I can find to any petitions that can be signed in the description box below as usual. Now, another thing I want to mention is that if your mommy and daddy are politicians, it's actually time for you to Sorosuke. It's been time. It was so baffling to me, to a lot of us, how a lot of children of politicians sat down quietly and watched everything happen because their privilege will protect them from the things that their parents do to other people. I was talking to my sister and she was saying how we all know very well that the government never would have sent soldiers to go and shoot at civilians standing on the street peacefully protesting if their own children were standing on the front lines protesting with them. But instead, there was a massive show of complacency from people who have parents in positions of power, people who could have used their privilege to make a difference in this protest. Now, another thing that bothered me is when we would see the politicians come out to address the people, they would say the children, our children, the youth, the young people. And I was offended by it because we're not your children, first of all. Secondly, they say it with a kind of condescension that is commonplace among Nigerian elders. Our people tend to feel that as far as you're younger than them, you must respect them, whether or not they do anything to earn that respect. And I think it makes it easier for them to dismiss whatever it is that people are talking about because it's the young people, the youth, the ones that are high on drugs, they are doing cyber crimes, they're 419ers, they're this, they're that, right? I think it creates or it allows for a severe othering of this group of people, right? So not only is it patronizing, it's also harmful. So all I can think when I hear them say these things is, we're not your children. When they give these speeches, we are not your kids. Your children are in the house, sitting down quietly, watching you run the country into the ground, watching you send soldiers to go and shoot at unarmed civilians. We're not your kids. So address the people with respect when you say their name. You work for them. You serve the country. They're your citizens. Address them as such. So the next elections are in 2023. So there's a bit of time, we need to violently educate ourselves, we need to violently vote these people out and get new leadership for our country. And not people who are from their time with their ways of thinking. The youth is the bulk of Nigeria's population. We have the numbers, we can pull the votes. We just need to make sure that we're educating ourselves so that we're actually ready when the time comes. I was talking to a friend of mine who said that we need to make sure that we're educating the masses as well, because these politicians generally like to target them and make them act against their own self-interest when it comes to things like this. An example is the government paying young boys like 1,500 naira, right, to go and attack peaceful protesters so as to cause a riot and justify sending in the police or whatever it is to control the crowd, right? Or buying votes from people when it's election time, giving a household a bag of rice in exchange for their votes. And to be honest, we know that these people are not bad people, usually they're people who are uneducated and people who are living in poverty and people who have to prioritize immediate sustenance. It's hard for anybody to see the bigger picture when you're trying to figure out how to feed yourself and your children today and on a daily basis. And the government knows this, so they exploit it. People like this who have been given the short end of the stick by the government and who are having that stick weaponized against them to keep those people in power are on the same team as us. We just need to make sure that we're educating and empowering the whole team and make it possible or easier for them to see the bigger picture because it strengthens the movement as a whole. And of course, there's a lot of logistics and strategizing that will need to go into making that happen. A lot of work, to be honest. So we need to educate ourselves about voting, among other things, so that those of us who are on ground when the time comes have everything they need in terms of education, in terms of the fire in them to go ahead and vote and make sure that it's done the right way. I watched a video today on this guy's Instagram. His name is Akinola Stephen, and these two young men proposed something. They proposed marking October 20th as a memorial day for the Lekki Tollgate massacre and organizing marches every year on that day, especially leading up to the 2023 elections, to keep people fired up and charged, to keep that momentum going. I think it's a great idea, and I think it's something we should do. We just can't keep going in the same cycles. We need to vote these leaders out and get new people in there with equal representation of all the states and all the tribes, and with an equal ratio of men to women in power in politics. Wherever we are in the ENDSARS movement right now, something has become very clear to all of us, and that's the fact that we're not like the previous generation. We haven't inherited that inherent hatred of another Nigerian simply because they're not of our tribe or they're not of our religion. We've seen that we can unite. We're not lazy. Those old tribalist, selfish, and sexist ways of thinking are wasting away. We can unite very easily. We can mobilize. We're smart. Look how much Feminist Co was able to do in a few weeks. How much money they were able to raise, how much people contributed, how much we all took care of each other. So now that we've woken up, we're going to speak up. We can't keep living with these leaders who have stolen so much, stolen money, stolen life, stolen opportunities, stolen people's futures. Now this change, this new Nigeria that we're talking about, it's not going to happen overnight, and we acknowledge that. I think we also need to realize that in deciding to improve our country, some politicians are going to feel like we're coming after their livelihoods, because we are. There are a lot of politicians who, eat from Nigeria's pool of money, right? And so naturally, they're going to show some teeth, just like anybody would if you come after their means of livelihood. Even though the means of livelihood we're talking about is, stolen or gotten illegitimately, they're not just going to step aside peacefully and allow us to create new Nigeria. And that's exactly what they did at the Lekki Tollgate massacre. That's exactly what they're doing in trying to take away social media so that people can't speak up, so that we can't hold them accountable, so that we can't educate everybody. So I think we're all realizing that we need to be very strategic, because these people are coming out, like soldiers, to push back and to shoot, to kill. We need to be prepared for that reality. But anyway, try to take care of your mental health, because this has all been a lot, honestly, in the past couple of weeks for all of us. Take a second to feel everything if you need to, and then when you're ready, stand up, let's strategize. And I'm grateful and proud of, what we've been doing so far and how we're educating ourselves and trying to sit down and figure out a way we can move forward and how we're not relenting. What did we always hear growing up? Every day for the thief, one day for the owner, Abi. That day for the owner is coming, and I'm so grateful for it. And I really just pray that we don't lose this momentum.